This is Battleground PA, a PennLive podcast discussing the issues that matter to Pennsylvanians and documenting the events in the Keystone State and beyond that could shape how you vote in the 2024 elections.
Hello again, everyone. This is Joyce Davis. I'm PennLive's Outreach and Opinion Editor, and we're coming to you with another Battleground PA. And we thank everyone for joining us, all our readers and our viewers on YouTube. And as you can guess, we have a hot topic to discuss today. And with me to offer some pithy insights are Rogette Harris, who is chairwoman of the Dauphin County Democrats, and Jeffrey Lord, who is himself well known in political circles and is a pundit that is on national TV, frequently on Fox. Am I right about that, Jeff?
I'm now a full-time Newsmax TV contributor.
There you go. No wonder you're working so hard. Okay, so we have actually, I think, some good minds here to kind of digest the latest in our political news. And we all know what the latest is. Well, the latest is what happened in New Hampshire, but we still have some fallout from Iowa, I think, that we can discuss. So let's get started. Jeffrey, what happened? Where do you see the results of the New Hampshire primary for Republicans being?
Well, I think to most people other than Nikki Haley, it's pretty obvious that she is not going to win this and that Donald Trump has this nomination pretty well in the bag, as it were. But she has made it very plain she is going to continue on. I think the next couple of primaries upcoming are Nevada and, of course, her own South Carolina. And what I find particularly interesting is that all kinds of people in South Carolina have endorsed Donald Trump, and he's way ahead in the polls. And, you know, it's sort of a cardinal rule of politics. If you're the governor of or in the past have been governor of a particular state, and you can't carry it in a presidential primary, that pretty well undoes your campaign. So she intends to continue, apparently, and we will see what happens. But I don't expect her to get much beyond that. That
makes sense. And what you say about not being able to carry your own state is really.
I mean, can you imagine if in the future our own Josh Shapiro were running for president and he couldn't carry Pennsylvania in a Pennsylvania Democratic primary? Wow, he'd be toast in a blink.
Point well made, Jeffrey. Although I will tell you, as I was looking at that, I was like almost like this saying, did she win? Because she actually came out like, yay, this is so great. I mean, Rogette, I'm sure you watched it too. What did you make of that? I thought, go girl, I don't know.
Well, history definitely repeated itself. And I think even she expected to not win. I just think she was hoping for closer margins and hoping for more of the independent base to support her. I personally think she's running for 2028. I think she wants to be the front runner for next time versus win this one, as the writing is on the wall, and the next presidential race will obviously be open primaries for both sides. So I think she's looking ahead and trying to make a name for herself to be the front runner for the next race.
You know, that's.
I think you're right.
Go ahead, Jeffrey, because I was going to turn it over
to Governor DeSantis as well.
Except, as we all know, a lot can happen in 4 years. I mean, a lot can happen before we even go to the polls in November, to be honest. But you're looking ahead and here's my concern, and I'd like to hear you talk about this, Jeffrey, too. I mean, normally former President Trump isn't so kind to people who have stood up and who have not been loyal, except we're seeing some chinks in that he now seems to have at least a warmer heart toward, Chris Christie, right? He's saying he's warming up to him a little bit more. So do you really think that this is going to be such a turnoff for Trump? Because he was pretty angry last night against Nikki Haley that she's just going to be obliterated.
Well, I think, you know, when he gave his victory speech after Iowa, he received a lot of compliments for the tone of it. And I know that my friend Sean Hannity has said on the air that he thinks that's a much better approach for him to use. And I have to believe that in private he's been getting that kind of message as well. So I think we will see more of that as we move along here. Because I mean, I just think effectively this is over here. I think we're going to get a couple more primaries. She's going to lose those. And, you know, the one of the numbers that doesn't get focused on very much at this point, but should, is the magic number 1,215. That is the exact number of delegates you need on the floor of the Republican convention to clinch the Republican nomination for sure at the convention. I frankly couldn't tell you how many Trump delegates were won yesterday or how many were won by Nikki Haley, but I'm sure they are spread around a bit there as they were in Iowa. I think he got 20 delegate votes in Iowa, and that counts. That's the inevitable and end game of mathematics here. So we need to keep our eye on that.
But that tone isn't lasting from last week, though. I will admit he had a better tone last time, but it didn't last 7 days. In fact, he's back to making false claims. I mean, last night he said he won New Hampshire, and we both know in the general election, we all know, in 2016 and 2020, he lost New Hampshire to both Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. So we're still perpetuating these are false election. So when the results are in his favor, this was a fair election. You know, when he loses, then it's rigged. You know, so we're starting that up already.
I do have to say I appreciate Jeffrey saying that maybe he's getting some private advice that another tone and it would be welcome to some of us, another tone. But let's ask you, Rogette, as Democrats are looking at this, does this help Joe Biden? Does this hurt Joe Biden? I mean, how do you view this?
Well, the president did put out a statement, and the listeners should realize, too, that Joe Biden won even though he wasn't on the ballot. There was a vigorous write-in campaign for him. But he did put out a statement. We've always known that it would be a rematch from 2020, and the president and the Democrat Party is looking forward and essentially to kind of, I don't want to say dismissing Nikki Haley, but the writing's on the wall that we're already planning, and you could see that in the president's statement, that he's already looking to the general election to run against.
Well, it sounds like my Democratic analysts and my Republican analysts agree. Nikki Haley is out, but I'm going to tell you, I hope she isn't, because it adds a whole lot more interest to it than just having Biden and Trump, right? I want some shakeup here, and so I'm glad she's decided to stay in. But
well, one thing on the Democrat side, I think I'm correct that Congressman Dean Phillips, who was challenging Joe Biden, got 20% of the vote in New Hampshire. I think that's what I saw as of last night. That can bode not well for President Biden down the road, because not that I think that Congressman Phillips is going to go anywhere, but if you've got 20% of the New Hampshire Democratic electorate saying they don't want Joe Biden, how is that going to translate when we get into a general election with a larger audience of people who may not be satisfied with Joe Biden? And I think Democrats are going to have to find a way to address that in some fashion.
But Jeff, before Rogette answers, let me just say, doesn't that calculus hold true for Trump? I mean, 40% said they didn't want him. I mean, how the logic, right?
Sure.
Does he have a problem with
just as a rule of thumb, I mean, if you've got a substantial chunk of your own party, whichever party that may be, that says that they don't want to nominate X, but. And again, in fairness to President Biden, I would say this kind of thing is always the case.
I guess
somebody's going to win a nomination and somebody's going to lose, and you're always going to have people on the losing side who say, well, I'm not going to vote for whomever.
Exactly.
And that's been true of every election in my lifetime that I can consciously recall. So,
but let's let's bring
There
Rogette
you
in.
go.
Rogette, I mean, he says 20%, but there was only one name really on the ballot. To me, it was incredible that people
Well,
wrote
right.
in. But go ahead.
Anyone who wages a write-in campaign knows how difficult it is to get people to write in a person's name. In addition, it's kind of, again, the writing on the wall that the current president, President Biden, is going to be our nominee. So a lot of the Democrats stayed home. The turnout on the Democrat side obviously was so much lower. But to get, I don't know the exact numbers, but last time I checked, it was almost around 10,000 people to actually go and write in your name. It's no small feat
That's
at all.
that.
So I would say that that actually shows energy on the Democratic Party, that people went in to vote for our president, whom we know is going to be our nominee, but to take the time to write his name in. I think that actually makes a statement.
You know,
Personally.
I have to say, one of the great joys of watching American politics is there's 50 states and there's 50 different ways of doing business
Yes.
in these states. And in the case of New Hampshire, I went back to refresh my memory, and I got out the making of the president 1964, in which in the Republican race, the favorites were then New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller and Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater. Who won the New Hampshire primary in a write-in? Henry Cabot Lodge, who was the U.S. ambassador to South Vietnam at the time and was 10,000 miles away from New Hampshire, never lifted a finger, but there were four energetic young people who organized a write-in campaign, and it worked. And he won the New Hampshire primary. So, you know, we all have our quirks. I can't wait till we get to our state.
Well, and that's what's unfortunate. The legislature here didn't move our primary up, because a lot of our larger states are toward the end, and people usually drop out before you get to us.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, every state is so different. I mean, even with President Biden, during the primary last time, he didn't win Iowa or New Hampshire. He had to go to South Carolina before
Right.
he really started to rise. So I never thought it was fair to put so much emphasis on those first two
First two.
states.
So let's
Because
talk a little bit about
yes,
where we're
because they
headed.
don't really represent.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about where we're headed. I mean, and I really want to hear your thoughts on the endorsements, right? Tim Scott, I mean, standing there smiling behind President Trump, right? Who owes his career? Who owes his career to Nikki Haley? I mean, how did all of this come about? And Vivek, you know, he's standing. They kept him to 1 minute, though. I will say that he had to be reined in. But Jeff, what are your thoughts on these endorsements? How important are they? And is this a betrayal of poor Nikki Haley?
Well, I imagine Nikki Haley sees it that way. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But, you know, one of the things that I find very interesting and unique to this campaign and the last one and the one before that with Donald Trump, people who run for office generally, president included, are just candidates. What we have here with Donald Trump, I think, is a movement. And so consequently, I think it is so big and so, you know, powerful in these different states that you get somebody like Tim Scott who says, you know, hey, I recognize that my voters in South Carolina are for Donald Trump. I better be on the right side. And so they endorse. I think in Vivek's case, I've met him. He's a very smart, nice, decent guy. I think he sees himself down the road as having a real future in all of this, whether it's a cabinet position in a Trump administration or you know, his own second run for president or what have you. So I think that there is a lot of that going on. All of these candidates, I would include Governor DeSantis in that. You know, he wants to be a future nominee, so he gets out and endorses Trump because 2028 will be coming soon enough. And we'll all be right here on Battleground PA.
They're getting on the Trump train, so they won't be left behind. Rogette, let's hear what you think of this, because I was just amazed. I saw, you know, him standing, smiling in the background. I love him, you know. What are your thoughts, Rogette?
It's sad, but I have to agree with the second part of what Jeffrey said, unfortunately, in politics, people think of self first. And remember, both of them tried to run for president themselves this time. Maybe they want to be vice president. This could be their, audition for that cabinet position. I think they definitely want something. As far as the movement part, I agree that Trump has his base. He has, and they are very loyal to him. The problem is that base hasn't won the popular vote since 2016, and it hasn't expanded. And it has. I just don't see that expanding this year. As we know, history often repeats itself, and if it does, it's not going to expand. It's just not going to expand.
That's a good point.
Can't win, and this is for any candidate. With any candidate, you can't win with just your base. Obviously, you need your base to come out and vote for you. But I know here in Dauphin County, we made history in 2023 on the county and local level because our base not only came out, but we expanded it with independents. I don't see how Trump in that base is going to expand, because even though Nikki Haley didn't get all of the independents that she needed to pull an upset, she still got a chunk that doesn't want Trump, and that chunk could very well again vote for Joe Biden.
Well, I would just say that.
Can you touch on that? Can you touch on what you just said
I would just
about
say that
how he's going to pull in others?
I would just say that the counter to that is every incumbent president gets tagged with their record. And as the polls are showing over and over and over again, President Biden is having a very, very low approval number over and over and over again. And this manifests itself in real life when people go to get a gallon of gas or a dozen eggs and all of this kind of thing, and the economy is not in the best of shape. This kind of thing hits home with people, and that's the kind of thing that they vote on. I mean, most people are not paying attention like we geeks to the ins and outs of all of this. But they are being affected every single day by what they will see as an incumbent's presidency, in this case, Joe Biden. And that, I think, is going to be a real problem for him.
And I can't wait to remind the American people of Donald Trump's record as a former president, because he has
low inflation, roaring economy.
The economy is improving and gas prices are coming down. Now, is inflation still there? Yes. Are prices still there?
If the economy is improving, why am I paying more for gas than I did when
Well,
Donald
the
Trump was
stock market hit a record high. I got banned across the Wall Street Journal the other day. So there's no dispute that the economy is doing well. But let me ask you this, Jeffrey.
Inflation has been an issue since COVID.
Yeah, but so let's talk about let's talk a little bit about where we raised the issue of vice president, cabinet members, and all of that. I mean, clearly it stayed with Biden. He's going to keep Kamala, I'm thinking. But are you getting some hints about what's happening with the shape up of Trump's potential cabinet?
With his vice president, I think it is going to be one of a handful of people, that being Tim Scott, Vivek Ramaswamy, Elise Stefanik, the congresswoman from New York, Governor Noem of South Dakota, his old press secretary and now governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, which is to say, I think his running mate is going to be either an African American or a woman.
Now, see, that's interesting. Hold it right there. Rogette, I have to tell you, I looked at that stage and I said, my goodness, this is a pretty diverse group of people behind President Trump, right? And look, the Republicans have a woman of color as a major. Is this going to start pulling people away from the Democratic Party? I mean, can Tim Scott steal black votes from Biden for Trump?
That's not a concern of mine. There are African American Republicans, we all know this, obviously not as many as Democrats, but when Tim Scott stands on a national stage and says that there's no racism in the United States and there never has been, I think that will resonate with people of color a little bit more than just the fact that Donald Trump chose a black man as his VP candidate. It is who the black person is, not just the fact of having a black face. And I think a lot of white candidates on both sides, I've seen this also on the Democrat side, just picks a woman or a person of color and thinks that's what's going to do it. But it's the content of that character. It's the content
Well, let me just
character that matters to us.
Content of that
let me
color.
that is exactly
That's a
the
nice
Democratic
way of saying
perspective.
that. I'm sorry.
That is exactly the Democratic perspective. If you are
No,
black,
that's
if you are
African-American
black,
perspective.
if you are a woman, if you are Hispanic, or in today's world, if you are gay, that is supposed to be synonymous with your being liberal. And if you're not really black, woman, Hispanic, or gay.
No, but Jeffrey, you're talking to a black woman. So I'm speaking as a black woman, not as a Democrat. And I even said that I have seen white Democrats do the same thing when I made the statement that I
Well,
did.
you know what Joe Biden says, if you're for Trump, you ain't black.
No, but I think the point that
And that
she
was
was
wrong.
making, I think the point that she was making that really has to be dealt with is, can these candidates speak to the majority of black? I mean, can Tim Scott really
Yes.
speak? And if he's saying things like, whether you agree or not, Jeffrey, if he's saying things like, there's no racism in America, I mean, you lose 75%, I would think, right?
Did he say that, or was that Nikki Haley?
They
sorry?
both said it.
Ah.
They both said it.
So anyway, it's something that they'll probably figure out. So the question now is, as we go forward, how important? I mean, we're channeling this thing till it gets to Pennsylvania, and I have to tell you, one of the things I neglected to tell you is we ran into Mitch Landrieu, who's working with the Biden administration. Who we ran into him at the Superdome for a big game in New Orleans, and he whispered to us that Pennsylvania is it. It is super, super duper important. So as we roll toward Pennsylvania, give us the preview of what you see coming in these next weeks. Start with you, Rogette.
Well, obviously, it's too early to look at the polls, but there have been polls in Pennsylvania, and so far, President Biden is way ahead in the polls to win Pennsylvania in the fall. I do know that Donald Trump is coming to Harrisburg in the next week or so. We also know that when Donald Trump won Pennsylvania, he won the presidency. When he lost Pennsylvania, he lost it. So I expect to see a lot of campaigning in this state moving forward. But, the campaign is very vigorous here with the Biden campaign. We also have Senator Casey on the ballot. So I expect to see a lot of joint appearances. We have the row offices where the Democrat Party is very anxious to win them again. So there's a lot at stake.
A lot at stake.
For
Yep.
the Democrats.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of attention on Pennsylvania this year.
So,
But I'm
Jeff,
confident that we will keep Pennsylvania.
Not for nothing do they call us the Keystone State.
Keystone. But Jeffrey,
And one of the
So the
One of the
president,
things
the
that
former
I think
president is
is-
coming to town. Are you going to be involved with that? Tell us what to expect.
I don't know. I've checked. It's a private event, as I
Okay.
understand it. I'm sure he's going to be back at other things, but I may or may not. It all depends on what the host has got going and all that kind of thing. I don't worry about it because I do hear from him, every couple of weeks or so. But one of the things that now I've lost my
Well,
train
that's
of
right. We're
thought
just
here.
wondering what a big hoopla it's going to be if he does come to town. But if it's a private affair, it's okay.
I know. Okay, I know what I was going to say to you. One of the things that is always key in Pennsylvania is the governorship, and that's because we have institutionally a very powerful governor's office. So when you have somebody of either party in that office during a presidential election year, that party has a leg up as such, because you've got a governor, and I'm not singling out Josh Shapiro, I'm just saying whoever is the governor, they've got an entire administration at their
to
beck and
throw their
call
political
that
clout
can help
behind them.
carry
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
But I'll tell you the final
Yeah,
thing, we
it's-
got to wrap it up, but the final thing I really think we ought to talk about is, as we're looking at this, and you talk about Biden's low poll numbers, but frankly, I remember Trump had some pretty low poll numbers as well. None of these guys are necessarily popular with the American people. And so how do you square that we got to, nobody wants to see a rematch of these two old guys. They don't want to do it. But this is what seems to be happening. I mean, just talk about how did we get to the place where the American people say no, but the party say, yeah, this is who we're giving you. Okay, Jeffrey, you go.
Well, I would just
I'll give you the tough one first.
I would just say that this happens all the time. To be perfectly candid, the American people are said not to want a Trump-Biden rematch, but that's not the case in Iowa. It wasn't the case yesterday in New Hampshire. I don't think it's going to be the case moving forward. Obviously, people are voting for them,
Right.
but I just think, I remember, to pick an example at random, to go back to 1976, when Jimmy Carter was running against Gerald Ford, I was reading commentary that we were a long way from Lincoln and Douglas, and that whatever happened, that we got such lousy presidential nominees. And there was a version of that with Kennedy and Nixon and Johnson and Goldwater, which says to me, this is always the conventional wisdom of the
Americans
moment.
are never
We're looking at
satisfied with their
whomever
leaders.
the nominees are and saying, oh, they're not as good. Well, history will determine that. So I never
We're
worry
never
about
satisfied, Rogette. You have the last word.
it. Uh-oh.
I was just going to say that people obviously do want this rematch because, as Jeffrey mentioned, they're voting for it. And Nikki Haley indicated last night she's going to stay in the race, so she is giving them another option. So if the Republican Party wants someone else, then their vote for it. But as far as the rematch is concerned, and considering Biden's low poll numbers, a lot of people don't realize what he has done in office in these past few years, and a lot has been done, and it's up to us as the Democrat Party to educate the voting public on what he's done and how it has affected their lives favorably, whether it's student loans, whether it's roads and bridges, whether it's the economy. We talk about wages. The Democrats have been trying for years to raise the minimum wage. It should not be $7.25 on a federal level, let alone on a state level here in Pennsylvania. But these are all issues that we are fighting for, and we just have to remind the voting public of that. And if they want us to keep fighting for them, they have to keep electing us.
And one other issue I would throw out there would be immigration. I think that has become a really very big deal to a lot of Americans.
It's a big deal to Americans, but frankly, less so here than I think if you're on that border. But anyway, let's cut it off here. I want to thank Rogette Harris and Jeffrey Lord for once again taking time out of their frenetic schedules to share their insights and their wisdom. So we'll see you back here next week, okay, on Battleground PA. We are duking it out for the presidency and for power in the United States of America. Bye-bye, guys.